So, so I want to start, obviously for everybody that's just joining, I'm talking with Nancy Antonucci, or Noosh, as she goes by. Also, she's
Yeah.
well known in the tarot community, and she just published through Llewellyn her second book, right? Tarot
Yeah.
Rituals. Her first book is also by Llewellyn, Psychic Tarot.
Yeah.
Um, so we're going to be talking about tarot rituals today, obviously, and then you can jump in and talk about your, psychic tarot also.
Yeah.
But I want to get to know you a little bit, and for people that are just watching this and they don't know who you are, they might be a little bit new to tarot, to the tarot world, etc.
Right.
So, who is Nooch? What's your sign, right?
Mhm.
And how did you get into tarot? And those are like probably loaded questions.
Yeah, really. Well, I'm definitely a teacher.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, I found out from writing this book that I'm actually not a tarot reader who reads energy. I'm an energy worker who reads tarot, because when
I
I
love
put
that.
that to different things like crystals and things like that, it all works too. So I thought, oh, wait a minute, I'm keeping myself in a little boat instead of being on a cruise ship. I think we're all energy readers. I think we're all energy beings. So I am an energy being. I am a spirit having a human life. I love this life. I'm a choreographer. I'm a pool player. But mostly teacher, really. I mean, teacher in that I love sharing. If it works for me, it can work for other people. And that goes to my sign. I'm an Aries. So Aries sun. Yeah, we'll lead the way, Aries sun, Taurus moon, Capricorn ascendant. So I kind of look
Wow.
like I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing, but Aries gets really spontaneous and wants to just run with shit sometimes. So, and then I got into tarot. I've always loved when my mom used to read stories to me, I would just get lost in the pictures and I wouldn't even really listen to her story. I just make up my own stories after a while, especially if the story was lame. I just go off on my own. And then mom got me a deck when I was about 9, and the images spoke to me right away. I think in images, so I'm definitely gonna speak in images.
I 100% really can relate to that. I'm a Virgo, but I'm an Aries moon, so a lot of my emotions, which are recently they've been all over the place,
Oh my God,
they
I know.
uh,
It's
they
crazy these days.
it's very easy to, like, we're very passionate, but also it gets in the way of like our impatient, so
That's right.
which
Well,
is
and I've got to say though, my magical self is definitely my Pisces in Venus, and it took me 60 years to figure out how to work with her. Oh, that's a I wouldn't wish Pisces in Venus on anyone, but now that I'm channeling it, it's like, oh, okay, it must be what a lot of empaths when they finally realize they're an empath. It's like, oh,
yeah.
this is why I'm struggling. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not
I
that it's all
mean,
struggle, but
yeah,
oof.
my Venus is in Libra, so
Oh,
so not
lucky.
not
My I'm
necessarily,
I know what's real, what's unreal. No, there's no
but
reality.
it
It's like,
but
okay then, bring
but
it
I like, I like to think, other than the fact that, emotions can be overwhelming at times, right? I like to think that going through that range of experiences and a range of emotions really
in.
allows us to connect better with the people that we work with, and
That's right. That's right.
to really, because a lot of people talk about empathy, but then they're thinking sympathy, they're like, oh, I
Exactly.
sympathize, I feel bad for you, I feel sorry. Question, what is your favorite thing about tarot itself as a practice, right? Because obviously, as you were saying, your approach is very different, as to say, like, I got a pack of cards and I got a book and I want to read it and I'm going to learn the meanings or whatever, right? Which is a valid approach, right? I'm not saying that's
Mhm.
not a valid approach, but your approach is more of an intuitive connection, right? And I'll talk a little bit more about that later too. But um, what is your favorite thing about tarot, the way you practice it?
I do. I honestly, Onari, I really believe it's a blueprint in how to be. a great human.
I love
And
that.
so it really is like, you know, like AA groups and stuff. When you really listen to everyone's story, you just fall in love with people again. And that's my thing. Tarot helps me love people.
Wow.
That's what it, because I love trees better. But, you know, it's like, well, but we have each other. And how are we going to do this?
Yeah, I kind of like, I definitely agree 100% with that too. And I feel like I guess it puts you in, gets you on the same level, right, as people,
Yeah,
because sometimes we go into these places of, whether it is by ego or whatever, right? Or just confident, overconfident, right? Then you go like, oh, I'm above here, and I'm like, or you are othered, like you are a different person and you're a different being, and you don't know what I'm going through, and I don't want to know what you're
right,
going through. It's like we're in this society where we're constantly taught to disconnect and to get distracted, and
right.
then having that tarot reading, it's intimate experience with that other person,
Absolutely.
almost
I
as if you
tell people
were
for
going through
years, it's,
like having sex or whatever, like it's a
I know,
very intimate.
honest to God, as a teacher, when I was younger, I just kept saying it's the second most intimate thing you can do with someone.
Yeah, I agree, because really, I
And
mean,
then
you're
together, it's fabulous.
and for the most part, you're really meeting a stranger, right? Because unless it's a repeat client or whatever, or a friend that you're reading the cards for, you're meeting a total stranger, and they're allowing you to merge with their energy, or to go into their life and take a peek and take
Absolutely.
a look, and they're inviting you, and it's really something that it's not to be taken lightly, but it's such a beautiful experience to experience. And I love how you describe it, because it's like tarot helps me love people. I think that that is something not a lot of people say, enough, I would say, and I've
Yeah,
never heard it expressed like that. And I really am probably gonna use that, and then I'm always gonna
please do.
I'm always gonna say it comes from you. I'm very
Thank
I'm very
you.
I'm very good crediting crediting sources. So I love that. And you mentioned your mom gave you your first deck, right? And you were
Mhm.
what, 10, right? You said, and I think you
Yeah,
mentioned that in the book too. Do you feel it was Rider-Waite-Smith deck, right?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. There
and
were only like 3 decks you could buy then, so that
it
was
was
one of
like
them.
the Crowley deck and Rider-Waite-Smith, and yeah.
And then the Boda thing, which was
Yeah.
kind of weird.
Well, and then Marseille probably, right? But it was just like
You know,
probably
I
not
did
as
not see a Marseille anywhere until,
until
yeah,
later on, right? Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah. Do you feel that when your first approach to it, right? Because you talk about it in the book, when you got the cards, you were just interested in really like looking at the images and seeing what the story was behind them, and kind of like I guess making up stories, right, with them, right?
Absolutely.
So do you do you feel like, or I guess I should say, was there, even though you were using it on a more intuitive level, do you feel that like there was a book or a particular thing that you refer to, right? Because I know like later on your coworker like gave you a Morgan Greer deck that you mentioned it
Right.
in the book also. But do you feel that there was a particular text or book that you refer to as something to help you understand the cards from a more practical perspective also?
I still think it's the Bible, is the 78 Degrees of Wisdom from Rachel. You know, when I did start reading about definitions after I knew had my own relationship with the cards, it was as if I entered a house that I kind of knew. It was the weirdest sensation to read but anyhow, that really, that and the Morgan Greer had this cool little book, not a little teeny one, but kind of a nice book that kind of showed, and I just wrote all over that thing. So those were really, I don't actually read books about tarot. I don't. I don't. Yeah. Yeah.
No,
78
that
degrees.
makes that makes yeah, that makes sense obviously because again, your approach is very different. And I think it's also an approach that when people I guess when people are exposed to it, they're like, "Oh, I could have done this. I could have done this all along without, without having to go crazy at, at trying to
Right.
memorize." And I think that's also part of the self-discovery of how do you work as a person and as a spiritual being or as a empath,
Right.
etc. Because I had some similarities with it. Like I love book knowledge, and I've read like I have
Yeah.
tons of tarot books, and I taught tons of books in spirituality. But I also have this huge aspect of my practice, which is just like, very psychic, very intuitive, very not
Yeah.
non-book related, whether the card is, about deceit or whatever, and then I probably can see something else that has to do, that's been going on and it has nothing to do with the card that I just pulled, in the traditional sense of it, right? So it's really that
Yeah.
permission to allow ourselves to do that, giving
Well,
ourselves
I tell
permission.
you, when I first wrote Psychic Tarot, at that time, intuitive was really looked down on. I mean, really looked down on.
Yeah,
That it
because
was seen
it
as
was
lazy
associated with like scammers or like
or lazy. You're
yeah.
not doing your work. And I was so fundamental about that in Psychic Tarot, like for a year and a day, don't read any other books, just you and the cards. But I got to tell you, if I was going to write that book today, I would not say that. I would say study traditional as well. Anything that you learn about this card is a layer. So sometimes in a reading, that traditional meaning surfaces up, and I'm like, okay, I'm going with that. Sometimes it's like, I don't know where this random information is coming from. I'm going with that. So because what's different from when I wrote the book, Psychic Tarot book, and now are YouTube readers. And so a lot of people think that the Page of Swords is someone who's scamming or, is uh, stalking. And it's like, wow, that is not in any historical tradition of Page of Swords. And I'm thinking, isn't that a riot? Me, who was like, oh, no, intuitive, put the traditional books down. Now I'm getting all like, would you please pick up 78 Degrees of Wisdom and read it for God's sakes?
Yeah, because I think it's the point of it really takes a lot of effort, and I think you also make that a point in the book to have a connection to whatever you call divine, right? Which
Yeah,
you call it
the creative
creative
unknown.
creative unknown, yeah. Which could be God, which could be spirit, which could be whatever name, or it could be just the Force, right? Like Star Wars, like
Absolutely.
whatever it is that you adhere to, it's really that connection. And a lot of people think that being intuitive equals making things up, or being psychic, it's the same as just I'm just making it up,
Right.
And while creativity, it's the doorway that allows for intuition to happen and psychicness to happen. There is that aspect of no, if you're just making it up, then you're doing it you're doing it wrong also, because it's not really about making it up. It's really about allowing it to come to you, right? And you use a lot of you use this, which I love how you explain it when you're talking about intuition as a cat. So I'm gonna let you say what the metaphor of the
The
cat is.
difference, yeah. But which, by the way, I mean, literally, like we kind of made up the traditional meanings too, because we
Yeah.
don't know actually who created the tarot. So, like, that person is the one that I would want to talk to, and everything else is hearsay.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
I mean, I would totally believe the Bible if Jesus wrote it, but that was like a lot of his disciples. So it's like, okay, well then, not that I won't listen to those stories and grow in love, because that's what it's all about. It doesn't matter what stories you follow. It doesn't matter what process. If you're growing and becoming a more loving, creative person, you are so on a beautiful path. And I think tarot has a way of kind of like keeping us on that path
Mm-hmm.
by various bitch slaps and everything. So the more
A
that
lot.
the more you understand those cards and hear them from very different dialects, the more you are going to grow. But the intuition, to me, and often I'll say to a client at the beginning of a session, so what do you really want to see happen? What do you really want to experience? Please don't be so rational. Although when you go into the world, please be very rational. we need both, but our dog is very pack animal, and they're here to make sure everyone in the pack is safe, and they pay attention to us, and
it's predictable, right? Like very predictable.
It's like our mind. It's like, what's going on? What do I need? How do I finish it? It's very dog, and it's very forward. It's just this and this. But a cat, it just wants to lay in the sun. They want to be comfortable. Mostly, if you ask me, most cats just want to be comfortable. And if there's yelling or discord or something, they're not there. They're not in that room. You guys figure it out, where a dog might be right next to you. So I also think cats have no morals whatsoever. None. They don't. There's no right or wrong for a cat. It's just, it's just me and my body being here. And if I'm not going to come to you if you call my name. A dog will come. I'm not. I will only come if it feels comfortable and lovely.
Or you have something or you have a treat for me, yeah.
or I hear the can opener. Oh, well, yeah, there's that too. So to be in an intuitive frame of mind then is, for me, it's like, well, in our day and age, it's really hard to feel just really comfortable and zen. Like that's an art form.
Yeah.
So so to me, that's why I call it the power of pretend. Pretend you're relaxed, because our brains are so literal. They're like, wait, are we relaxed now? And in fact, when I tell my brain, actually, I'm pretending everything I'm going to say next, my brain just kind of goes, okay, I'm out of here. It's like, good. Bye-bye.
It's like short circuits the brain, and it gets it out of the way. Definitely.
You kind of trick it. And to be intuitive or creative, you have to feel safe. And you have to be in your body and feel safe, and that's when, not to say that some creativity doesn't happen when you're way out of your body and in a very dangerous place, but is that sustainable? And
yes. And is that somewhere where you want to be? Yeah. I want to ask you, before we go into the book, a little bit deeper, do you have a favorite tarot deck right now, or all-time favorite? I'm sure that's a good question.
Really, no, that's a great one. My all-time favorite is the Handle.
Oh, really? I love
that. Oh,
yeah.
It's like, I call it it's my fortune teller deck. Unfortunately, now I should probably not say this out. Well, I'm going to say it. My son loses things. And so now, he's 23 now, so I've had years of him calling, say, Mom, did you pull a couple cards to see where I put the keys? So I've gotten really good at just finding objects for them. But they're so worn out. These are my original. I've had these for like 35 years. Oh, look at who I picked out right away, High Priestess.
Wow.
See, I beat the crap out of my decks. I should buy doubles, but I'll just wear them until they're like, the Tarot of the Crone is the card I pick every day. So I've been using Ellen Lorenzi Prince's Tarot of the Crone for about 10 years now. I use that for my everyday
card pulls.
Mm-hmm. And I'll write, if something really big happened, I'll always put it in her book. Like I'll put the date and say, like when I presented at Reader Studio, that was huge, and that card I picked that day, I wrote it Reader Studio 2015 or I don't know, whenever I did that. But it helps them because when you pull the cards, you can kind of see the history. There's certain patterns that keep coming up.
And
that's what I love.
yeah, I think patterns and also, yeah, pattern recognition, which is a big thing when you're reading tarot and doing, I guess, any divination, right? Because you're only gonna be what inspired you to write tarot rituals, right? So you wrote Psychic Tarot, which is a little bit like a bigger, I guess, a bigger book in the sense of like the, I guess the size, right? It's a little bit bigger, and
Yeah,
it's also, it's very, both of them are very hands-on, but Psychic Tarot like has all these exercises, obviously, and it's more for like if it's both beginners, advanced, etc., but it's more for people that are wanting to delve into or explore tarot and their own psychicness, right? Whether they're going to
right.
use tarot or not professionally, that's a different story,
Absolutely.
right? But this one in particular, when I started reading it, and I'm gonna be 100% honest, I was like, I thought I was gonna be like, you know, an easy read to go through the book, right? And as I started reading, I was like, oh shit, like I really have to pay attention deeply, and not in a bad sense, obviously. It's like a very it's deep. It's deep work. There's a lot of psychology to it. It's not, and I'm disclaimer, we're not, it's not that she's offering psychological advice or whatever, on the
Right.
book, but there is like a deep, it has that psychological depth along with the spiritual depth to the book, which is, it's something that really requires you to go and do the work. It's not something to, it's not a light read to entertain yourself. It's really deep work that you're doing, and I think it's going to be very popular in the with the people that love to do shadow work and that love to do introspection work,
Mhm.
because it allows all the exercise, etc. It's very detailed on how to really find out, how to really get to know yourself, right? How to
Absolutely.
really get to know your environment and what is your purpose and your intention, etc. You talk about those things in the book, but before spoiling it for everybody, right? What inspired you to write it?
Um,
And actually, a couple of years after you wrote your first one.
Lots of years after,
Yeah.
yeah, like almost 11 years later.
Yeah,
And in
yeah.
fact, yeah, and I wrote that with a friend and student. So what happened after the book was I started doing an emailer for my students and clients for the transition of all the seasons. So when a season's come, and I always had a tarot suggestion and a non-tarot suggestion because I had a beautiful dance teacher who said, honey, anyone can hit a pose. It's the one who does transitions that makes transitions interesting. Those are the ones you watch, or that's who you want to be, the one who can do transitions. So I thought, okay. And, I never missed a deadline and it was all self-imposed, but I just, and I had a little mailing list of 50 people originally. And it was like, no, I'm just going to do this. And after 6 or 7 years of doing that, my writing I could find my writing voice, which is conversationalist, but not, so there's a heavy teacher component to it because I want to get information to you so that you can then do whatever you want with it, but there are a couple things that were happening for me that I thought, okay, one is that I started going into a studio every Sunday and just experimenting with tarot to see such an amazing tool and it really is helping us be a human. So what else is it? What can I find from it non-verbally? And either through my body or through energy. And I'm telling you, after 6 years, I really seriously only had one breakthrough. But it was big enough breakthrough for me to realize everything is energy. And the book itself, to be honest with you, I was complaining to Barbara Moore about where are our tarot magicians? When are we going to do something with tarot that actually goes beyond helping muggles not be afraid of it, and, getting past the demeaning part of it and going past the witchcraft of it. And it's just like, God almighty, do we have to keep holding everybody's hands here? Where do we want to go with tarot? Where is tarot as a muse pushing all of us? And then I thought, I have lots of ideas about that because, I do it all the time with myself. It's like a lab. I do see tarot. To me, tarot is like Buddhism. It's not a religion. It helps every spirituality. Like, that's how I see tarot is it helps anything, I would believe, as long as it's about love. And so I thought I could, Barbara said, well, I was complaining, because I felt like we were in a rut as a group, everywhere around the world, not just the United States. It's like, are we going to do anything with this or just read for each other? And she goes, I don't know, Nance, you want to write a book about it? And I thought, not really. Writing is hard because it's so solitary. Like, I'm a performer. I want that. Hey, is there applause? Like, I love that, like, instant, and it's like, you don't get that with writing. And in fact, Onario, to be honest with you, I'm dying right now because there's very little feedback about the book. And I kind of complained bitterly to Goddess the other night. She goes, Nancy, they're still reading it.
Yeah. And that's a valid point, because again, it is not a book that you are going to read cover to cover. I compare it to like the delivery of information. Like, I compare it to, like, I remember when the first time I picked up the Unfortunate book or whatever,
Yeah.
and you sit down with the Unfortunate book, it's not a book that you'll read cover to cover either. It's really a book that you have to, because
Absolutely.
first of all, it was written 100 years ago, and second of all, it's the depth of the information. It's something that you really have to digest and sometimes just put into practice. It's not something for you to intellectually understand it alone. You might have yeah, go ahead.
I can't believe you brought up D.N. Fortune, because I was just talking to my friend James Wells right before this, and he said, honest to God, he just gave it, see, synchronicity. You can't make this shit up. It just happens when it happens. But D.N. Fortune said, magic is the transformation of the consciousness of will. And to me, that I think hopefully that's what tarot rituals will help people. It's like, wait, how can I take my own power on as a magician? How can I be really grounded and loving as Empress? How can I create a structure as Emperor that's actually life-sustaining for the world, for all of us? And it all ends with the world. The world. So we're not trying to get away from the world. We need to create the world, and I do think all of us are creating it every day, but could we use tarot in a way that really helps us? Like, could it be a rocket ship? Or a circle in the woods, and also I felt really pushed to give people ideas about how to work in groups, because I'm telling you, group settings are different. A lot of times in a group setting, you're going to get that one person who talks all the time, a teacher who doesn't call them on that, and then real quiet people that don't say shit for 2 hours, and it's like, okay, how do we, how can we do this so that the quiet or the one who feels very talkative can just wait? They can be more patient. They can listen. But my quiet ones feel safe enough to talk.
And having that, it's really about that balance. I think of the Temperance is my favorite card of tarot. And I even have a tattoo of the
wow
of the cups of the the Temperance
oh
cups.
I love those.
And I also think about alchemy. It's really about the alchemy of it, right? Which is like getting to that point where we find it's not just how this works or that works, or it's how it's working together, right?
Right. And how can we work better together? I feel like a lot of us
creating that balance, within whatever's
Yeah.
divine and earthly, right? Like that Temperance has that foot in the water, and then it has that,
Yeah,
it's an angelic being, right? Like, so it's like that
absolutely.
connection of divine and physical, right?
Totally. And then the star being the human representative in my way of temperance. And, think about that Rider Waite. I mean, really, any woman in her right mind would open her legs like that for a camera? No, you'd switch it, so that the angle was just a little bit more, but she's wide open. She's like, no, I accept myself. I am stardust. We're all stardust. We're in constellation with each other. How can we just bring this magic to a new level somehow? Because the world needs us, Onareo. I mean, it needs creative vision now.
I love how you said in the book, you say the world, the world needs your magic, and I think
It
that's
does.
such a big call out and also inspirational. Um, okay, so I want to ask you about, because I do this series also about the writing process, and you were saying, well, writing is hard, etc. What was your writing process, right? What is your creative process in the sense of uh, because obviously on the book you talk about your creative process when as it relates to tarot and rituals, right? Like the embodiment of the card or entering a card, or also exploring the energies, right, of the cards. And you also have like a whole chapter on major arcana rituals and then group rituals, etc. The very interesting rituals to mark the seasons, etc. But also, what was your creative process as far as writing? Like,
Um,
how do you start? How do you decide? Okay, Barbara said, write that book, right?
oh yeah.
And then you're like, oh shit, what am I gonna write? Like, how did you decide what you were gonna write, and
I
what was that process like?
for me it's like herding cats. It's like all those ideas come in, which is my favorite part of the creative process before I have to eliminate any of my children. All of the ideas can be there. Like, oh, Jill, Jill, Jill. I write them down, index card, index card, index card. And then I lay them all out on a table. And I start to see the spine, which to me is the table of contents. It's like, okay, which one of these belong to the other? And so you put them in groups, and you kind of see that how it flows. Because that table of contents, when I had that, then I was ready to write. I very literally cannot write on the computer. I can't. I cannot do that. I have to write longhand with a pencil and an eraser. I love erasing, instead of crossing out, you just, it's just it's very Aries, isn't it? It's like, we
I
want
think
the
that
sound of it.
it's like a very organic experience to write
Totally.
and
I had a
also.
little pencil sharpener. I could listen to lute music, was the only music I could listen to, or Vivaldi. I could slip Vivaldi in there every once in a while, but nothing modern or lyrics. A friend lent me his farm once a month because I could not write and do readings at the same time. I can't work. It's two different parts of me. And so I would just work, I just read clients like crazy to make up for the week I'd be missing. And then that week was just writing. And sometimes I'm telling you, I would stand at that table for 2 hours before I wrote a word, because I had to see how it just wanted to come through.
I'm laughing because I did a Melissa Sonova invited me to present at her kitchen table gathering this year,
Oh,
this past year, right?
yeah.
And I was I pitched, she's like, well, you can talk about whatever you want, but whatever. And I was like, that's not a good thing for Virgo because 100,000 things went through my head. I don't know if I want to be fine.
I know.
I don't know
Well,
if
I
this
did
is
have
enough,
three people.
so.
I had three people that one was a good friend of mine, Tim, who lives in Pittsburgh, and he really, was looking at the grammar of things and stuff once I handed them. But my friend Sam and my friend Rita, and Rita was the one who the book was written for. She knows enough tarot in her own language, but she really wants to grow. She wants to be more, intuitive. She wants to be more spiritual. She wants to feel like she knows her purpose. This is who this book, that's the person I want, is the one who is ready to jump into tarot world as they know it and really shine without apology.
I think that's great to have that support also, especially because you were mentioning earlier that everything you like, you think in pictures, right? Like you see
Yeah,
things in pictures, right? And that's a very real thing. And sometimes when we're verbalizing or vocalizing something, right, you have to maybe help from someone that does that in a connects that
absolutely.
in that way, or communicates more in that way, so you can make it make sense for everybody, right, involved. So I love that. How long did it take you to write this
2 years.
book? 2 years.
Yeah, and I took a break during the beginning stages of the pandemic. I just couldn't.
Focus on, yeah, it's
I get her support.
yeah.
Tarot rituals was different. Tarot rituals is like, how can I personally find other dancing hierophants? How can we bring tarot, not bring tarot, how can we let tarot bring us to a new level of being creative advocates, whether we do it through tarot or not, where we're helping single moms or businesses or activists. How do we inspire? How can we do that? Because tarot does that for us. It inspires us. So to me, it was like a call to that path of creativity, and just to find out how you're going to express it fully, because I do believe we need it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think it's also acknowledging everybody, acknowledging your own process and going,
Mhm.
and following the lead, right? And I think it's
Right.
very important, as you say, that maybe you didn't think you would write a book or whatever because you like that one-on-one or teaching people,
Hmm.
I guess like face to face, or or through Zoom or video or whatever. But really, the book immortalizes that in a way, where you don't have to be present there
That's right.
for your knowledge to reach somebody, because there are places you might not reach, or
That's
whatever.
right. This
So
book
that
is
doesn't
like
matter. The technology, yeah,
books
or
are
another
words.
language, yeah, that it gets translated to another language that maybe you don't speak,
Yeah.
but it will get on to, it will live on in that sense too. And I love that. So you already mentioned how you found your voice, which is very interesting. I always ask that question, but you already brought it up, and also kind of like having sounding boards from other people that are very supportive, right? Which
Yeah.
we always have to find people that are supportive of us, because
Absolutely.
if we find someone that is just gonna criticize you, then what's the point? You can do that all by
Exactly.
yourself. You can do that all
Yeah.
by yourself. um, I want to ask you, which are, finding the intention of the ritual, right? Because ritual is a way of signaling our brain or our spirit, right? That
Yeah.
we're embarking on a task, right? And
Hmm.
this task has this meaning that we are assigning to it, because we want to receive information, because we want to receive a blessing, because we want to get rid of something, right?
Right.
That's
We want
burdening
to transform
us.
something.
Yes. So we're really, that's really the magic that we're talking about. It's not just, yeah, you can use to candles or whatever. It's not a book of spells or anything like that, just so
Mhm.
people are clear. But you talk about a lot about intention in the book, which I think that's the main thing. And it's not intention. It's like, well, my intention is to be happy. It's really like, what does happy look like? You know,
Exactly.
it's not just like,
Yeah.
oh, happy. Yeah. Does it mean you want to be smiling all the time? Does it mean you want to be like
Yeah. What is
Steph
your
or
intention?
wife, Steph or wife, or does it mean that you want to explore happiness and if it's full, and what does happy look like to you, etc. So I think that those things are so important in our process of understanding ourselves, and I guess others also, because we're always, especially, and I always say this almost all the time, in social media, we're thought to compare ourselves all the time to other people and
Yeah.
the curated version of their lives that they present on social media or platforms or TV or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I have to do this and I have to, but there's no deep understanding of anything else. It's just I'm doing it because everybody's doing it. And it's not really about being popular or doing the same thing. It's really about what is the bringing, what is the purpose, and what is the meaning in your life. And if it has no meaning, then what's the point of doing it, right? And I think your book
Exactly.
really goes deep into that. And I should say, as I said earlier, the book is very deep in the sense of, and obviously everybody will have a different experience reading it because it depends on the depth and the things that are going on through the lives, right? For example,
That's
major
right.
arcana and the major arcana aspect. When I was reading the devil, which is my shadow card, like my birth card is the lovers.
Oh, it's your year, Lover's Devil year.
Yeah. So so the devil, is that dark aspect of like and overindulgence, etc. But like, what are things that I don't want to look at? And what is you mentioned something that it's so deep in and out of itself, which is like, what pretty lie am I telling myself? You know what I mean?
Oh
And
my
that is such
God.
a fucking excuse my language. That's such a fucking like thing, It's like saying
Oh my God.
what is a pretty lie that I'm telling myself?
Oh,
Because how many of those, Like I mean, I know I tell
right.
myself a lot, a lot of
I
pretty lies
know.
to just to be able to cope with certain things. I'm like, oh yeah, well,
That's
I'm ready,
right.
But it's really when it's like staring you blank in the face and saying like, am I ready to let go of this lie
Absolutely.
and really know the truth, right? And embrace what's true, right? And it might not be pretty, but it is true.
Well, and again,
you know?
it's how to be just how can we be more human? You know, well, what is being human these days? Is it more spirit human? I mean, we're all spirits as humans. At least that's my modus operandi. So, how do you is that ready to change? You know, and what if each one of us just like jacked it up a couple levels, then what would that do to the collective? And I would say, honestly, this book might act more for people. They might want to see it more as a cookbook. It's like you don't read a cookbook. It's Easter time. What are the ideas for Easter?
Yeah.
It's just like, you know what I mean? Like you might want to just
Open
rather
it
than
where you need it and work on it.
exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's great. On the major arcana, I should say you also give like prompts and those advice or I guess questions, right? And then you give a guided visualization or meditation which you can read, you can record. It's again, it's not a thick book as you can see, but it's meaty in the sense of like it has a lot of it's dense, It's like that. It's something that you have to
It is.
really sit down with it and explore. And I think it was much needed. I think it was much needed
Thank you.
in the community because again, I'm a sucker for an easy read also, but I think if I'm only reading easy things, it means like, well, it's just entertaining or it's just something
Right.
to scratch the surface, but what's underneath, right? And if I'm always looking at the surface alone, I'm never going to know what's underneath there or above, right? So
Absolutely.
it's just like you're just going to know what's there.
And
And I
for
think,
me too, it's just what I was finding when I part the veils. So I do hope that there are certain times in the book where you're like, shit, I don't feel that way at all. It's like, good. What do you feel? Like if that's not how you would make the soup, how would you make the soup? You
it's
know?
that and it's that permission that allowing the
Yeah,
reader to decide for themselves what is it that this is going to mean for me. And I
absolutely.
honestly love it. So I want to give you this last 2 minutes or whatever, right, to promote anything that you have going on. Obviously, as we're talking about, your book is already out, Tarot Rituals from
Yeah.
Llewellyn Books, and it is available on Amazon. Barnes and Noble, if you have a local bookshop, you can order it from
Yeah,
them. It really helps the authors and the publishers and gets the word out, right? Or your local library, they can get books also.
yeah, that's a great
Um,
idea.
and if you do get the book, please leave a kind review on Amazon or anywhere you're a kind
Yeah,
review, meaning
thank
about
you.
the, I've seen sometimes I see reviews where people are talking about they don't like the pages of the book or whatever, and I'm like, that
I
has
got a
nothing to do with
review. I
that has
already
nothing to
got a
do with
bad
it.
review on Amazon, and they said, "This is all over the place. She made up spreads." And I'm like, "Oh, you
I
think?"
mean, every spread is made up, right?
I was like,
Especially the most popular one, the Celtic cross, which has nothing to do with a Celtic cross, but
I
it
loved
doesn't
it though.
matter.
I'm like, yes. Well, I was going to go around the country and do like bookstore readings and real funky workshops the next day. And I'm like, I am not Onario. I'm not going to travel in 22. It's just too funky. And my dad's 99 and my Chihuahua is 13. I'm going to stay put. But I'm going to do a lot of videos, I think. I'm updating my website. I'm going to get some online courses on there, and then I'm going to do videos. But I have been doing, several people have called me to kind of do Zoom rituals with their group, which is
I
really
love that.
fun. So if anyone's out there, it's like, hey, I got a group that might be into this, just let me know because it's a great way of um, how to unlayer the book for you. That's my goal this year is to help people kind of, if you're a baby witch, I think you should do this, this, and this one. If you're on the brink of teaching, why don't you look at this chapter, and this chapter? So I'm going to try to help people use it well,
Yeah,
for them.
yeah, that's right.
I
um,
know. Now we got to take some of the changes that happened because of the pandemic and just run with it, but where are we running? So
yeah,
it's like, we can figure
how are
that
we
out.
using? Yeah, it's a tool. Then how are we using it, and how are we um, manifesting in a different way because it's still manifestation, right?
Yeah.
I want I want to thank you so much. I love
Thank
talking to
you.
you. I knew I was gonna have a blast because
I
I've seen
know. Well, I've
I've
seen
seen.
pictures of you for a while, and I'm like, who is that?
Thank you.
Yourself.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
your
sweetie.
time, your wisdom. You're welcome here
Thank you.
anytime you have something going on. And thank you for everybody that watched. And this is going to be on my feed, so people can watch it later. But I will tag Nancy. You can follow her and also
Yeah.
check out Llewellyn Books because they have a lot of good books coming out also this year.
Oh,
So
yeah.
amazing. So thank you, Nancy, so much.
Thank you,
Take care.
sweetie. Okay,
Bye
bye.
bye.